All right, you are very welcome to our fifth and final webinar of the Startup Global 2022 program. This is Digital Skills, a Blueprint for Global Growth. I'm Isabel Nolan. I'm the program lead at Startup Canada, and I'll be your host and moderator for the day. So to begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I am on today is located on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. I encourage you to take a moment today to acknowledge the traditional territory that you're residing on today. So today's session is being recorded and we will be uploading it onto our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. And I invite each of our attendees to introduce yourselves, connect with each other in the chat. That's also why we're here, and get to know one another. And so feel free to share your name, your organization, and where in Canada you're joining us from. So a little bit about Startup Canada. Startup Canada is a national non-for-profit that's the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business in Canada and beyond. Since launching in 2012, Startup Canada has grown to support more than 122,000 entrepreneurs annually, an ever-growing grassroots community network from coast to coast to coast. Startup Global is one of Startup Canada's flagship programs, that connects a pan-Canadian cohort of entrepreneurs wanting to build a global business with a network of partners dedicated to their success through workshops, boot camps, pitch building, advisory support, digital resources, and more, all housed in an accessible and easy-to-use online portal. This free program recognizes the importance of exporting to the Canadian economy, celebrates those making waves in the global marketplace, and empower early-stage founders to take their ventures to the international stage. I would like to take a moment to thank our co-presenting partners, EDC, the Trade Commissioner Service, and UPS, and our national and community partners, Forum for International Trade Training, otherwise known as FIT, MasterCard, Scotiabank, eBay, and Google. So today's conversation is focused on building and expanding your business online. Our speakers have extensive knowledge in knowing the best practices to sell online, improving your digital marketing skills, and how to best utilize financing tools to help you scale abroad to get your product into the hands of customers in new markets. So without further ado, we only have an hour, so we've got a lot to unpack. I am delighted to introduce you to our speakers for the day. I have Kesi, who is the Vice President, Canadian Banking, Marketing and Digital Growth for Scotiabank. Gabrielle is a Trade Commissioner at the Embassy of Canada for the United States of America in Washington, D.C. Amanda is the founder and CEO of Black Bow Gift Co. And Josh is the Senior Product Marketing Manager of International Commerce at Shopify. Welcome. Thank you for donating your time and expertise today. I really appreciate you joining us. All right, so we are going to get started. So first, I'll let our speakers introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and the organization that you work for. Gabrielle, I might let you kick it off.
Thank you, Isabel. So as Isabel mentioned, my name is Gabrielle Grubka. I'm a Trade Commissioner at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. And the Trade Commissioner Service is part of Global Affairs Canada. And our goal is to help Canadian companies pursue business abroad. So here in Washington, our focus is on the U.S. market with a specific concentration in the U.S. Mid-Atlantic. And my area of focus is primarily e-commerce and consumer products.
Wonderful. Delighted to have you here, Gabrielle. Josh, I'll invite you to go next.
Sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name's Josh. I'm based in Waterloo, Ontario. And as mentioned, I'm a product marketer at Shopify. I've been here for about 3 years, and I work directly with the product team who's responsible for helping our brands localize their online stores so that they can sell more effectively to customers in different markets.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Josh. Kesi.
Thanks, Isabel. Great to meet everyone. My name is Kesi, and I lead our marketing and digital growth teams at Scotiabank. Scotiabank is a global bank, so we have lots of reach and footprint in other markets, particularly in Latin America and the Caribbean. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. My teams are focused on executing the marketing function across the entire organization and also building out the long-term strategies around driving digital growth, both in terms of customer engagement and customer acquisition as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kesi and Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Cluett. I'm the founder and CEO of Black Bow Gift Co. We are a luxury e-commerce gifting business selling gifts all across Canada, both in terms of everyday gifting and corporate gifting. And, you know, as someone who left a 15-year corporate career to embark on a dream and a passion of starting my own business, I'm just all about the conversation today and helping other entrepreneurs, because I'm somebody who learned everything I know with the mentors around me, the free resources online, and a lot of hard work. So I'm excited for today's conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you all. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to each of you. We each got some important areas of expertise within this topic. So we're definitely gonna have a really great, well-rounded discussion today. Attendees, just to make it clear, we do have some questions organized for our speakers, but if you do have any questions throughout the session, you can use the Q&A box below, or you can put it into the chat and I will ask on your behalf. So Amanda, I'd love to get into your business. As you said, you are purely an online business. So can you tell us a little bit about the early days of setting your business up? What are the lessons that you learned and how did you navigate these?
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, I left a 15-year career as a professional project manager to embark on my journey. And so what that means is I knew nothing about running a business. I knew nothing about owning a website or building a website, selling a product, everything digital marketing, except for kind of really understanding how to dive into analytics was completely new to me. And so I think it might be helpful for me to just maybe breeze through a couple of things that I think I did right in the early days from a digital marketing perspective, and some things that definitely, when I can look back on, it would have been nice if somebody had told me to maybe avoid some of these things. So from the get-go, some of the things that I know for sure that I did right, because again, I maybe found these resources online or I had other mentors kind of educating me on this, was setting up my email marketing. So the second that people were willing to engage with me, really kind of getting into collecting that information, because every time you send out an email as a business, there is a high likelihood that you're going to be able to generate some revenue from it. So it is one of the best free resources that you can have access to in terms of being able to kind of continue to generate revenue and sales. Developing a very solid user experience was something that I spent a lot of time doing research on before even deciding what selling platform I wanted to use. And so the research in terms of, you know, my business idea in particular, I found myself having the problem, which was therefore then kind of how the idea of, you know, luxury gifts that didn't take hours to source was something that I saw a huge gap in the Canadian market and thought I could do a good job in filling. And so I really kind of started with assessing kind of how would I want to shop, because I saw that I was having that problem, but also recognizing that I'm not all users, and everybody kind of within our demographic of clientele, they do shop very differently. But it was a good enough starting point for me to really assess, like, how would I want to be able to buy gifts for the types of gifts that I was looking for. And once I was really, and again, my experience as a professional project manager, I knew enough to be able to kind of speak in the terms of like the technology requirements, both in terms of what must my website be able to do versus what would it be nice for the website to be able to do. And only then, when I was able to really kind of answer those questions, was I then able to decide that Shopify was actually the best selling platform for me, given all the pros of it. So really understanding the user functionality, but then not ever stopping to ask the question, like always asking the question, of, you know, what do my users want? Talking to your clients as you start to generate sales, like how do they want to shop, you know, and being very open to hearing sometimes some feedback that can sometimes not feel so good when, you know, your clients might be asking for something that, you know, you haven't even thought of before, or, you know, is going to be a big investment on your website. So really continuing to engage in the conversation with our clients to really understand what kind of functionality they want was something that we did right from day one, and we continue to and include that as part of our business journey. Leveraging all, like there are so many free resources out there in terms of tools and education that you're able to access. It was something that, again, Google My Business, from an advertising perspective is something that's free and easy to use. When you're working on your website or social media, there's programs like Canva that can really kind of like beef up and, make the aesthetic of your work look a lot nicer very quickly. So really kind of assessing what free tools are out there was something that, just kept the investment down in terms of what we were looking for to spend. Photography, as a product-based business, photography is something that is so important. And it was something that I had to learn myself, because hiring a photographer for everything that we needed to take photos of was just not an option on the table. And so if I look back at my photos on day one versus our photos now, and I could explain how quickly we can do a photo in under 3 minutes and have it edited and ready to go on the website with the equipment that we use and the editing tools that we use. So I'm happy to dive into that, because it's a part of my business that, I think we have beautiful photos on our website, and people don't believe how we do them. And it is the cheapest, most efficient way that you can take photos, and we're really proud of the end result. So we did that really well. And finding if you're going to be hiring support to help you in all of the areas when it comes to digital marketing, because it is just such a big world. And again, if you're a new entrepreneur, an experienced entrepreneur, you can have a lot of experience in these areas, but they're constantly changing. So you're just always having to educate yourself more and more and more on these tools. And so sometimes it does make sense to outsource certain parts of it. But for us, what makes sense is that we're able to find support where they're able to teach us as well. So sometimes maybe we don't have the capacity or the ability to make a change ourselves, but it's wonderful if our support is able to do that for us, but then is also able to teach us how to do it, so that we're building the capacity kind of in-house. Some things that I maybe did wrong in the beginning, after our website was launched, I really didn't want to sign on to any big contracts with web developers for kind of ongoing support. I thought, okay, Shopify's pretty is wonderful to use, but because we have some customization on our website, we had to do tweaks that we just didn't have the ability to do. And we did work with a couple of different developers early on, and it just really kind of, I'll say it pretty honestly, it messed up our code a little bit. And we actually weren't aware that it was messing up our code, because we don't have the experience to kind of see those things. And it was just a very interesting kind of insight, that consistency on that front, and having somebody that you really trust when they're working on your biggest asset as a website, as an e-commerce business, was really important. The other big thing, I think that was a big mistake for us, and we lost about a year, was not segmenting our email lists, because we do everyday shopping on our website for everyday gifts and everyday occasions, but we also do corporate gifting. So large scale corporate gifting for events, or when companies are sending out gifts to 500 employees. Those are two very different clients in terms of how we need to market. And we weren't segmenting our list early on. And it was a big missed opportunity, because you got to get people to open emails, and you have to make sure that you're sending the right information to them. So I know I just kind of breezed through just a few things, so I'm happy to dive into more if there's questions, but I would say that those are some of the things we did right, and some of the things that we would obviously do differently now that we know.
Mm. Oh, no, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing both the things you did right and the things that you did wrong. Because I think a lot of the questions that you said that you were sort of asking yourselves, or maybe in hindsight, you're like, oh, that's so obvious. But, a lot of the times it might seem obvious when you have the experience and have gone through it. But for someone starting out, they're like the starting questions, and the answer might not be so obvious to them. And so to the rest of our speakers, I'm curious, are there any common questions that you're hearing from founders in each of your respective areas? Common questions that you get asked time and time again that again might feel obvious to you, but to them it's the unknown. Josh, maybe I'll go to you first.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, obviously I have a very specific perspective on this, because I am very much in the international selling space within Shopify. Obviously, Shopify lets you sell online anywhere, both in your domestic market and internationally. But because of my position within the internationalization area of the company, I get a lot of questions from merchants very often around how do they get started selling internationally, and when should they start scaling internationally, which is, great questions to ask at any point in your business. And the truth is, like, when should you start thinking about that? That could be as early in your scale up as you want it to be. It depends a bit on your product, depends on product market fit. It depends on the capacity you have and the technical setup that you have with your online store. So it really depends on your business, but we often encourage merchants to start thinking about at least a couple international markets, key international markets really early, and start testing your products in those areas. I know it's daunting at first and sometimes overwhelming, but if you're taking care of some of the essential things, like making sure you have cost-effective shipping and you've consulted with a tax professional, there are some really low-hanging fruit things that you can do on your online store to start localizing for international buyers. And then that gets into the how. What things do you want to go down the checklist, which we can certainly talk about in this session as well, of like what you want to do. But those are definitely questions that I get asked quite frequently, is the when and the how.
Okay, great. Gabrielle, how about you?
So I think the biggest question we get is often companies that are wanting to connect with buyers. And I think it's really important before connecting with buyers that your digital is ready to go. So the first thing that a potential buyer is going to look at is your digital presence, and specifically, how does it look in the market that the buyer is focused on. So in the US, it's incredibly important to have a strong digital presence. So, even though some things are changing also on the social media side, you really do need to make sure that you have strong social media channels for your company, for your brand, because some buyers, for example, might have certain thresholds where they say, we're only going to consider brands that have a certain amount of followers or a certain level of engagement. So it's really important to think about those things. And I would also echo a lot of what Amanda said in terms of, kind of the lessons learned. I think all of those are super key. You want to make sure that you have that all set domestically. And of course, you're still continuing to learn as well. Like, and things will change, as Amanda said, like digital marketing changes every day. But you want to make sure you feel like you have a handle on that, or a strong handle on that before you consider an international market.
Okay, great. These are great tips. And Kesi, anything to add to that point?
Yeah, obviously it's interesting speaking from the perspective of a bank, because sometimes that might not feel in the same space, but the truth is the goal around focusing in a resource constrained environment rings true and familiar. And one of the questions I find quite often, especially when we talk to our small business entrepreneurs in that space, is the balance between scaling and fast and focus. And I think, both Amanda and Josh have spoken to this in little touch points, which is how do you, I think, really understanding your customers and the journeys in which they engage with your product and your business is particularly important. I think, Amanda spoke really well about this, which is you might actually have multiple customer journeys with your business, and being able to understand that and find the opportunities for your biggest ROI in terms of, and when I say ROI, it's not just in terms of, the payback on cost, but also the payback on your time and effort and your resources at the same time too, because when you're operating within a resource constrained environment, you really have to be able to really precisely talk about what areas you're going to focus on. Quite often I have folks come and ask about, how do I solve for my digital marketing, for example, but then there are multiple spaces within that. There's your website, there's email, there's social, there's the e-commerce part of the ecosystem. But understanding the journey of your customers will allow you to have visibility into where to focus more specifically. So, sweat the data, always be focused on that data and continuous evaluation, because I think one thing that we're learning even more so now than in the past before is that customer trends and the way they engage with brands and businesses also is changing quite frequently. And so being able to pinpoint how a customer is engaging with your brand and your business, and then finding that opportunity within your resource constrained environment and really focusing on that one thing, right? if your customers and the type of customers you have source your type of business in social, then maybe that's where you focus a lot of your efforts on, is really building your social media presence and putting together content that's engaging and to be able to kind of engage with those customers. But if there are others in different spaces, then maybe email is the space that you focus on. But I think really thinking through what that customer journey looks like and finding the pain points. One thing we say quite often at Scotia is, shop your shop, right? So be your customer and shop your journeys, and quite often you'll find breakdowns in that journey and areas of opportunity that if you're finding, I can guarantee your customers are finding as well too, and these are low-hanging fruit opportunities that you can fix.
That's a great point. Shop your shop. Yeah, I'm definitely common theme is really focusing on the customer journey and what that journey looks like from one market to the other as well, right? It's not going to be the same experience for every market that you go into, and looking at the data and where is your traction coming from, and then putting your efforts into those streams. All right, fantastic tips from our speakers. So we've kind of gone into like the different questions that you're getting asked, and I think what's also important to look at is a business's readiness to sell online as well, and not only just selling online, but selling to various different markets as well, and the different regulations that go into that. So what should founders be considering before they even start selling online? What's the sort of, Josh, you mentioned sort of a checklist that they should perhaps go through. Maybe I'll go to you first on that. So what should they be top of mind and considering before they start selling online?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting to sell online, I mean, obviously that has become almost a requirement for selling these days. I mean, you can sell online and in person, you can sell online only, but it's really hard these days to build a successful business brick and mortar only. So considering that online presence in the very early days or at the first day is really critical. So there is no time too early to start thinking about building an online presence. When you start expanding and you're looking towards, maybe you want to start experimenting, selling into a new market, that's when some new questions start to arise, because building an online presence is great, and it theoretically lets you sell everywhere just because of how ubiquitous the internet has become globally. But just because you can sell everywhere doesn't mean that you're selling anywhere effectively. So while having a passive presence is better than having no presence in different markets around the world, it isn't going to help you scale your business effectively. So you need to start thinking about how to build a targeted strategy for some of the key international markets for your business. And the trick really is to create a product that you know is going to resonate for customers in a specific market, and also providing that good buying experience for customers in that market. It goes back to that shop your shop that was mentioned earlier. That's so critical, not just shopping your shop from the perspective of a customer in your market, but in the next market. Because those experiences are going to differ, not just based on customer segment, but based on geographic segment as well. And then prioritizing which markets are going to be most successful for you. Obviously, for Canadian merchants starting out, the US is probably the next biggest step. It's going to 10x your potential customer base overnight. But you got to start thinking about what that buying experience is going to look like, all the way from marketing your products to American buyers, to making that buying experience on your storefront, from the browsing experience to the checkout experience, really seamless and familiar. And then all the way to what the delivery experience is going to be across the US, kind of going through each stage and trying to understand what that would be like from a different buyer's perspective, and trying to figure out, local currencies, local languages, the right payment methods. All of those things combined are what make an effective online presence for you, especially as you start expanding into that first new market.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Josh. Amanda, maybe I'll go to you next. I know you did touch on sort of what you did right, what you did wrong, but how did you prepare yourself to sell online? I think maybe you had quite a you gave yourself such a short runway time, I believe.
I did, yes. And I mean, I was leaving a 15-year career to follow a dream. I have a family. And so for me, the business had to be successful from day one. I didn't have time to see if it was going to work. I had to be able to kind of see within the first 3 to 4 months, was I going to be able to make a really solid business? So from day one, my website had to look like we were a company that's been around for 10 years. And that was my strategy going in. And I mean, people couldn't believe it when they would say, how long have you been in business? And it's like, oh, a month, and they just didn't believe it based on the way that our website looked, based on the photography, based on the functionality that we had, because we had substantial more functionality than a lot of our competitors in the Canadian market even as well. But what I would say was really important was, one, making sure that we had that really solid web presence, because that was going to be the way that we were going to sell the gifts. But two, really making sure that the product was solid and that the service behind that was top notch. Again, we're a luxury gifting business. And so for me, I wanted people to be over impressed and wowed each and every time. I always say that, we're the kind of business that when you're shopping online sometimes and it, something arrives at your front door and you're like, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to look like. We are the kind of business where it's the complete opposite. People are shocked at how amazing the gifts look. They look exactly like they do on the website. And so for me, having a really solid product that we were really proud to sell, and the solid customer service and the solid digital front from the website perspective, that to me was kind of like the trio, the core that was necessary for us to be able to kind of dive into the growth that we needed early on. And I will say I'm really proud because we have a very, very high repeat client rate, which to me signals that we've got a solid product and we've got an incredible service and people enjoy shopping with us. Yes, there's lots of tweaks that we can still continue to do on our journey. But people know that they can trust us and they know that they're getting quality with us. So yeah, that to me was kind of the trio that was necessary for it to be solid before we launched.
Okay. And Kesi, in terms of what to consider when planning a strategy for different markets, is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, and so that's something we're well familiar with, and again, I like the things, Amanda, that you're touching on quite specifically, because I think really understanding your business and product, and understanding what your non-negotiable vision is at a top level, right? So I think for a luxury business like yours, that experience, the in-person experience, is particularly important, right? And so not compromising on that is the lifeblood of how successful the business will be, and then all the other stuff comes after. So I think when going into new markets, I think really having that introspective discussion with yourself about what is that non-negotiable vision that you have for your business that is region agnostic, right? Like it cuts across regions. But then after that, really understanding how different regions and different geographies respond to your product and your business. Because, one thing that is particularly familiar to us at Scotiabank is the way customers engage with their bank, and the relationship that they have with their bank in Canada is very different with what they have in the US, very different with Latin America, very different with the Caribbean, right? Like the way the general population views a bank is very different, right? And quite often people assume that markets and the relationships are similar. That is always a common mistake, especially between Canada and the US, to just assume that the way Canadians respond to your business and your product is going to be the exact same way. In Canada, there's 5-6 banks, major banks. In the US, there's like thousands, right? And a small regional bank in Texas could have more customers than we do in all of Canada, actually, right? So, and they would act and look and feel very Texas-centric, right? Which is a very different vibe, a very different persona, very different tactics in terms of how you engage. So it's very important to understand how customers and consumers in different markets react to your product and your brand, and be conscious of that as you're expanding out your strategy.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, thank you. And kind of keeping on the note of the various different markets that are within the US, right? Because I think maybe a lot of founders will think, I'm going to export to the US, but realistically, there's at least 50 different markets for you to target there. You know, the regulations differ from state to state. So there's a lot to consider there. So Gabrielle, you know, sort of being based in the US, what sort of support are you providing to Canadian, I think it's specifically consumer products that you're supporting. So what kind of support are you providing them when they're looking to sell to the US, and what are the regulatory measures that they should be considering when picking where to go exporting in the US?
So usually I like to have an introductory conversation with a client and kind of see where they're at, what research they've done, where their initial interests are. Sometimes they might have natural linkages to certain parts of the US. Maybe they have family there or they lived there previously, and so they're considering certain options. And kind of echoing what others have said, it's really important to be very specific in your marketing and where you're looking. It's impossible to be everything to everyone. So you have to think about, you know, what is your product? How might others engage with it? And where are the opportunities? And it's okay if that initial strategy ends up looking very different 3 months from now, 6 months from now, because you're going to continue to learn more information about your customer, and that's going to change where you focus your efforts. I think the other thing I would say is that, you know, with regulation, I think sometimes there's a perception that the US isn't as strict from a regulatory perspective as perhaps other countries, you know, maybe Canada or, you know, perhaps the EU. And, you know, I think it really depends. And it doesn't mean that there aren't regulations here, right? And I think, you know, one of the challenges we see is that, and also from an IP perspective and a customs perspective, those are kind of the 3 things that you really want to be thinking about. And with regulation, especially on the consumer product side, there might be multiple agencies involved. It might not just be one agency. So that's something that we help, you know, we speak with companies about that and say, you know, these are, you know, the things that you need to consider before you even are selling here. You know, and also, as you said, Isabel, there can be also state specific regulations that you might not be aware of. And as, you know, as an online business, you know, depending on where you're selling, you might be subject to those. So, you know, those are some of the things that you want to think about. And then, you know, finally, I think the other thing I would say is kind of the state sales tax in the US is also very important in understanding just how complicated that is. And we do know that there are some states that are very stringent on enforcement, including enforcement of foreign sellers. So you really want to make sure that you're understanding of that and following, you know, the appropriate rules and regulations as you're selling online.
Great. Yeah, they're fantastic points. And to our attendees, if you are looking to export to the US, we did actually do a completely separate webinar with a few entrepreneurs that had gone through that process of exporting in the US, and we go into more of the nitty-gritty details of what that looks like. So you can find that on our YouTube channel if you wanted to look at that afterwards. So just thought I would mention that as well. We won't be going into those specific details in today's conversation. I know that we also have a few questions from our audience, so I have made note of those and I will get to those. But I want to come back to Josh for a little bit and to talk a little bit more about Shopify. I think it's easy to say that it's like one of the leading platforms to build your online business, both to be domestic and also an international shipping as well. So can you maybe talk a little bit about why are entrepreneurs choosing to use Shopify to build their business online?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about Shopify for a minute. So yes, like you said, millions of entrepreneurs are using Shopify to both build and run their businesses, and that's across from like entrepreneurs who are just starting out, making their first sale to large multinational enterprises. And for those that are unfamiliar with Shopify, it's a platform that helps you connect with your customers, all the way from helping you build and host your online store to helping you sell across various social channels. We've talked a few times now how important digital marketing is via social. That's a big part of it with Shopify, making sure everything's integrated. We help with email marketing and even with your in-person sales through brick and mortar locations. And it helps you tackle everything in one place. So you can manage your inventory, track your payments, get those real-time insights, which has also been talked about earlier. And it is both simple to use, but also can handle some of the complexity as merchant scale. Amanda mentioned she's looking to scale a little bit. She runs into some complexities. It helps you grow with your business as you scale up.
Mm-hmm. And more specifically to your role as well, Josh, what are the pieces that you're educating Shopify users on in terms of scaling their business globally, and what are the kind of the key pieces of advice that you're giving them when they're building their online store?
Yeah, absolutely. Amanda mentioned this earlier, and I'm glad she did, because at the end of the day, what it comes down to, both when you're selling online at all or anywhere, but specifically when you start thinking about expanding internationally, it is all about trust. And I'm so glad that was touched on already, because I think that's really the crux of being successful as you start to scale, and especially as you start to scale into new markets. A customer doesn't want to have any doubts while browsing your site about what currency your product is listed in, or if your business can even ship to their location, or if they're going to have surprise fees when the order shows up on their doorstep. All of those things, if they're not sure and confident in your storefront, that is going to erode trust immediately, and that's going to lead to them not proceeding to check out, which means you'll never be able to get them again, which means you're going to hurt lifetime value because you're never getting them in the first place. And it's overwhelming to even start to think about your very next market beyond your domestic market. It's overwhelming, and there are a lot of nuances to these considerations where you want to go. But there's some low-hanging fruit, and the team that I work on helps you localize your storefront. That's just one of the many things that you need to do when you're expanding internationally. But being able to sell in the local currency of your customers, being able to sell in their local language, being able to go beyond language translation and adapt the message. This was mentioned earlier, where some different places in the US have their own languages, or not languages, but they prioritize different things. So you need to kind of adapt your message to different markets, so that you will make sure that your marketing message really resonates. Make sure you're offering local payment methods. Some countries in the world aren't as credit card centric as Canada and the US. A lot of merchants don't know that, but it's true. So all of these things combined can drive significant conversion increases from your customers, which ultimately means more sales for your business. And they're all things that you can do with a modern e-commerce platform. And you also want to make sure that international customers can find you. That's one that we often don't talk about, but it's really critical. Making sure that your store is optimized for search engines, and making sure that they can surface the right localized version of your store. It's not enough to just localize. You need to make sure that that version of your store is going to be found. And as many of us are Canadians here, we all know that if we see a .ca or a /ca in the URL bar, that's the right experience for me. And I feel much more confident that merchant's going to provide a good buying experience. And I'm going to be much more likely to actually proceed through checkout and become a customer because of that step that they've taken. So that's where I focus day to day. And I'm really passionate about it because it is a critical piece of being successful as you start to explore new markets and selling to new places.
Fantastic. Thank you. There's definitely a lot of tips and tricks in there. And again, like a lot of that might seem obvious to some people that have gone through it all, but a lot of that is, there's specific things that I just learned there as well. So I think it's really important to highlight everything from the get-go. Amanda, kind of keeping on the same wavelength, you talked earlier about ensuring you have specific functionalities within store, and I know that you're a Shopify user as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, again, like early days, I had to start with something, and I assumed myself as the user and how would I want to shop and buy a gift and send it to myself or send it to somebody somewhere else in Canada. But over time, as we started getting questions from our clients, we started getting feedback from our clients where they would say, oh, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could do this? Or they would just generally ask, oh, can you do this on the website? And, we really did open up good conversation. Like I said, we have a very high repeat client rate. So a lot of our clients have become like family, and, they're like friends. And, we don't have kind of the stock standard emails that we're sending to them. It's, we're asking them about their life and their kids and, their work and that sort of thing. And so we've really been able to open a dialogue of, what do you mean by that? And how would that change your shopping experience? And, and then kind of taking that information away and going to see, okay, does an app exist, on the Shopify platform for us to be able to do this? Or is it something that we would have to embark on from a custom perspective? And again, so being able to kind of have a network of individuals around us that are able to help kind of guide, that would be a really easy thing to do versus, no, that might be something that further down the line, like it really does help to develop our plan of what does the functionality need to be able to optimize the conversions on our website. And, how can we then kind of develop that into our plan of where we want to go on our business journey? Because some changes, they're very easy, and Shopify makes it so easy. I mean, I actually find that Shopify kind of guides you along sometimes. You'll get a nice little email from Shopify saying, hey, this new functionality exists. And it's like, oh my gosh, great. Like I actually, and, sometimes we'll try things out to see, does that actually change the experience? Everybody's been kind of saying it, pretend you're shopping your website. Anytime we make a change on our website, the entire team here at Black Bow Gift Co. goes on the website and just tries to buy from a number of different ways just to see, is something now not functioning the way that we want it to. It really is all about functionality, because we've all been on websites, we've all been shopping, and the second that you have an issue, you're gone, because you've lost the trust. You don't think that, your order is going to go through. So yeah, we're always talking about functionality and keeping a list of the things that our clients are giving us feedback on, things that our clients tell us that they're having a difficult time with. And that's always an interesting thing, because sometimes you don't know, is it a browser issue? Is it something that we can actually influence? Is it something that just is magical technology stuff that sometimes just nobody can make sense of? Like, you really do have to get good at kind of troubleshooting. Is it a major issue? Is it, do we need to invest time and money on it? And it's just constantly evolving. And I'm really passionate about, us coming up with a plan for our business that means that we're ahead of the game. We don't look at our competitors. We don't look at what they're doing. I mean, it's kind of nice to know what other people are doing in the market, but I always say to us, I'm like, how can we continue to make our experience with our clients different than anybody is offering? Because that to me is where we're going to be able to just continue to optimize our conversions and stay ahead of the competition from a functionality perspective. It's really cool when you hear feedback from your clients saying, because we have a feature on our website where people can actually go and design their own gift. It's not a functionality that a lot of other businesses in our competitive kind of market have. And we love when we hear from clients who just tell us, like, sometimes I don't even need a gift. I'm just going on the website making one because it's fun, because it kind of walks you through a step-by-step of like building a gift. And, I'll have friends of mine that will screenshot me like, this is the gift I want, because they're going and creating their own gifts. And so when people tell us that our website is fun, it gives us really good signals that we're heading in the right direction with respect to the functionality, and because we keep it at the top of our priority list.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic testimony if people are saying that your shop is fun.
Yeah,
like that's that's the ultimate goal. Like you've definitely nailed the user experience there, and definitely helps to that you're putting yourself in your customers' shoes constantly as well, and ensuring that journey is as smooth as it can be and as engaging as it can be. Josh, you mentioned about trusting any shop that you see a .ca at, and it pinged something on my mind that we do to all of our attendees out there. And our friends over at Rebel and CIRA have put together a special offer to give you a free .ca domain and manage WordPress to help hosting your business online. So I'll put the link for that in the chat, but I just wanted to to mention that as well. If there's anyone that is looking to get a .ca domain, we can help you out with that and help automatically build that trust. Okay, so we're still good on time. So Kesi, I wanted to come to you in terms of building a strong e-commerce strategy. So what's important when thinking about an e-commerce strategy?
Yeah, and I think folks have talked about a lot of the different elements, particularly I'll call this at the top of the work stream, right? Like, so really identifying what your strategy is, the journeys, all of that stuff are important. But I think, you know, the fascinating and the great thing about digital experiences is that you get to root your decision making in data, right? And so you may not be good at data and understanding data, but like there's lots of solutions out there that make that easier for you to do. That needs to be your bread and butter, is really understanding what conversions look like, really understanding your funnel from all the way from the top to the bottom of the funnel, from, you know, Josh spoke about, you know, lifetime value and stuff like that, is really understanding those details. And the reason why is that, you know, I'll go back to the point around resource constraint, is that what sweating the data does for you is that it allows you to focus on the highest opportunities for improvement and the biggest opportunities for improvement, right? And sometimes, you know, while you're doing the qualitative work of, you know, talking to customers and getting that feedback, sometimes data will actually pinpoint opportunities for you that maybe your customers are not telling you about, that they're trying to power through, right? Because they like your product, right? Because, you know, I think we can all, you know, vouch for opportunities where you've seen something that you really, really want. And as such, you're just pushing through barriers after barrier after barrier in the process just because you really want to get it, right? But while that is good in terms of you've created really good value proposition and folks are excited about that, the chances that somebody comes back to do that again is lowered, right? And so, you know, you might finally get that in hand, but the next time you're going around, you're like, maybe I might look for a different place to get that, because while it was great, the process was really challenging. And quite often customers will not tell you that stuff up front because they really wanted to get the product. So the data allows you to illuminate those opportunities in the funnel and really start to identify, you know, how you're converting both from, you know, you can think about your marketing expenses and how you're converting that. You can think about the opportunities you're driving in terms of driving organic demand, right? Like, you know, Josh, your point around SEO optimization, huge, right? Especially if you're operating in different markets, right? A well-missed opportunity, because what will happen is that your primary presence, let's say you're based out of Canada, is well optimized for search, and then that shows up, and then you create, you know, a version for a different market that isn't as optimized, and then that's much harder to find, right? And similar to the storyline around the URLs, like you see that and you're less interested. Even big name brands struggle on this, right? Quite often, you know, if I'm, not to call out any particular brands, but if I'm shopping for clothes or something like that, there are actually some big stores that don't surface up their .ca version upfront. And to Josh's point, that's a deterrent right off the bat, because immediately in my mind, if I see something that's not .ca, my mind's going to, well, is the price actually going to be in Canadian dollars? I'm going to think I'm paying $50 Canadian, but it's actually $50 US. There's going to be extra shipping costs. And so immediately I'm already calculating all these dynamics in my head and be like, that's probably not what I want to see. So I think really understanding the funnel and really pinpointing where those opportunities for drop off are. And to Amanda's point, I think testing and learning is a valuable opportunity that you have in front of you, especially when you're operating in the digital space. much harder to tweak and test and learn in real time in the physical space. So take that as a valuable opportunity. If something looks interesting, test, and if it doesn't work, optimize, right? And so that's the only way you find the nuggets in the space that can literally transform your business. Amanda, the fact that people are coming onto your website to design things for fun, I think that's such an amazing thing to hear back, because, and I think you probably stumbled onto that with this incremental functionality. I think that's a benefit that comes out of that, but it's a benefit that's so valuable to your business overall. So I think being open to testing and learning, and knowing that in the digital space that is way more agile and way more tactical for you to be able to do that. So take advantage of that and test and learn, both with your segments, but also with your functionality as well.
Yeah, I feel like the overarching theme today is like really putting yourself in your customer's shoes and like testing, ensuring that journey is as smooth as it can be, because we all shop online, and so we're all in a way sort of shopping experts when it comes to shopping online, and we can be quite fickle, right? So if that experience gets interrupted, or if you're questioning what currency is this in, am I gonna have to pay duties on this when it arrives to me, instantly you're just like, oh no, I will find something else. So yeah, I feel like that is just so key, understand and going through the data as well. I think that's, if you take anything away from today's conversation, it's definitely put yourself in your customer's shoes, and walk through that process. All right, we still have a few minutes left, so I do want to make sure that we get to some of our attendees' questions. So let me see. I see we've got one in the Q&A. So we have a question from Betty that says that they sell all natural vegetarian dog treats and they want to sell internationally. So they're wondering, should I be incorporated, number one, and have a GST number? I'm not quite sure who to go to for this, so if you feel you can answer it, please feel free.
I'll just speak really quickly to it. I can't necessarily speak to the domestic side, but I will say that pet food is very heavily regulated in most international markets. So I think, doing what you need to do to prepare domestically is one aspect, but then when the time comes to explore international markets, if you have certain ones in mind, connecting with the Trade Commissioner Service or a similar export development agency to kind of get the rules of the road on that, because you might find that the regulations make it, very difficult to export your product.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, great. Each market will be different in terms of what their regulations are. So great tip, reach out to the Trade Commissioner and see how they can help you in that. So Betty, I hope that answers your question. I have another question from Dennis about insurance. So wondering what insurance should look like, what they should be getting really for cosmetics and skincare. Again, whoever thinks they can jump in on that.
I guess I can jump in again, sorry. Insurance is very important. So I think it's important to speak with multiple providers and see what's out there, thinking about insurance for loss, theft, returns, all those sorts of things. I will also say that in many instances, a buyer is not going to want to speak to you unless you do have insurance, especially in the US and likely other parts of the world. So definitely think about that before any further engagement internationally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Gabrielle. Amanda, there's a question for you about your website functionality. So they're wondering, did you hire a web developer or simply use Shopify?
Early on, to get to launch date, I did hire a web developer to just get it to the point that it had all the functionality. We do, like I said, the design your own feature on our website is purely a custom feature that had to be built. There wasn't an app to be able to do what I wanted it to do. So yeah, no, we worked with a developer until launch day. And like I said, we kind of went through a phase where we weren't working with a developer. We're back to working with a developer that we can trust, because there's just so many moving pieces and we need to stay ahead of the game. So yeah, I think it's a great investment if you're able to afford it. And if you're not, I still think it's doable to do it yourself. You just might have to have a longer term plan for certain functionality if it does require custom work.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Amanda. There is a question from David about, do you need to put text descriptions on your website photos? Maybe this goes to Amanda and Josh. I don't know if either of you are able to speak on that.
Go ahead, Josh. You are the expert, probably more than me. I would not want to give bad advice in this area. I can tell you what we do, but I think Josh would be the one.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you do, Amanda. I can jump in quickly. Yes, text descriptions are absolutely a best practice. Anything, accessibility is always critical, regardless of where you're looking to sell. So, absolutely make sure that your bases are covered there. Like there's certain things that you need to do. Alt text descriptions, making sure that your policies are continuously updated and reflective of how you ship and support on your website. If you are looking internationally, making sure that all of those things are localized as well. That's something that's easily forgotten. It's really easy to think about localizing a product page or your homepage, making sure it's translated and making sure the message is adapted. People often then forget about the little things that are then critical. So making sure that you're taking a comprehensive strategy across the board, specifically when it comes to localization in different languages.
Yeah, and we fill in every little place that Shopify gives us opportunities to fill in information because, from a search engine optimization perspective and just having really just good functionality with what we need to do on the back end, it just makes our life a lot easier.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm afraid we are just at time. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And if I feel like I can make an introduction to any of our speakers, if it's applicable, we can absolutely make that happen. So thank you so much for joining today. Really, really appreciate it. To all of our attendees, I have a very quick feedback poll that I would love to get your feedback on. So it'll only take you a few seconds to do that. So while that's up in your screens, I want to give a massive thank you to our speakers, Kesi, Gabrielle, Amanda, and Josh. Thank you so much again for donating your time and expertise today. I certainly learned a lot, so I'm sure our attendees have been vigorously making notes on everything that you spoke about. We have made some notes of our own, and we've kind of cataloged all of the resources that have been shared. So we will send out a recap email to you as well in case there's anything that you missed. And the recording will be on our Facebook page and our YouTube page as well. So there's lots of opportunity for more learning there. Thank you again to our co-presenting partners, EDC, TCS, and UPS, and our national community partners, FIT, MasterCard, Scotiabank, eBay, and Google. So that is a wrap on our webinars for Startup Global 2022. And if you'd like to learn more about the program or want to be the first to learn about next year's program, you can head to our website, which we will link in the chat now. But thank you again, and hope you have a great rest of your day, hope great rest of your week, and we'll hopefully see you in the new year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.